Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit BBQ. On today's video, I'm going to be making up some smoked brisket jerky. Stay tuned. Alright, so I've got a whole smoked brisket right here that I had left over from my food truck, and I'm always looking for ideas on what to do with leftover brisket. And yes, if you own a barbecue business, sometimes you will have some leftover food. In this case, I was not happy with it, but I had a whole leftover brisket. So I'm just going to take this out of the foil and out of the butcher paper. So this brisket has been in my fridge for 1 day, so it's ice cold. All right, so here's our whole brisket. Now for this cook, I'm only going to be using the flat portion of the brisket. I'm going to save the point for something else. So now this brisket is 100% cooked, and briskets, just in case you guys didn't know, are 75% water. Okay. Now this brisket was twice as heavy before I smoked it. Now during the smoking process, a brisket will lose about half of its original weight due to moisture loss and fat loss as well. So I want these pieces probably 1/4 of an inch thick. So it's stiff as a board right now. Got a nice little fat cap on there. Now traditionally for jerky, you don't want a whole lot of fat, but for this cook, I'm going to go ahead and run with the fat cap that is on top of these slices. Now as far as the shelf life of this jerky, once it's dehydrated, it's probably only going to be 4 days maximum, okay? So you're going to have to give some of this jerky to your buddies. Now this brisket isn't 100% dry. It probably still has, I don't know, I'm going to guess 30% moisture content inside of it. But we're going to do our best to make some brisket jerky. Now I've never seen anybody do a brisket jerky, so this is the first time that I have seen, so I don't know what to expect. You know, I don't know if this slice is going to shrink up a little bit. I think it will once it dehydrates. Now you can go in there and trim the fat cap off, but I kind of like the way it looks with the fat cap on, plus the seasoning is on top of the slice, so I'm not going to be taking that off. Alright, so I'm starting to get into the point, so I'm just going to take one more slice. Alright, let's take a look at the slice right here. You can see the point meat right here and the flat meat. This is going with the grain, and this is going against the grain. Okay? So I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to grab my dehydrator, and I'll bring you guys right back. Here is my 10 drawer meat dehydrator. I'm going to pull out, I don't know, maybe 2 drawers. I think should be enough. I'm going to pull out 3 just in case. All right, I'm going to grab my smoked brisket and position these slices on my sheet here. Now when I was thinking about doing this recipe, I was thinking about using a raw brisket. Not sure how that would turn out, but in order to have smoked brisket jerky, you almost have to pre-smoke the brisket. Now if you wanted to add some curing salt to have a little bit more shelf life on this jerky, you'd have to do it ahead of time. And I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 days sitting inside the cure and then smoke the brisket. Then you'd have almost a pastrami jerky, which wouldn't be too bad. So I'm just laying out my slices. All right, now to the jerky. I am serious about my black pepper. Got 20 pounds of 16 mesh black pepper here. Just gonna sprinkle a little bit of black pepper on top of the brisket slices, just a little bit. I'm only going to add the black pepper to one side of the slice. I'm also going to sprinkle a little bit of kosher salt on these slices, just a little bit. Remember, this brisket is already seasoned, but for the jerky, I want it just a little bit more flavorful. I can already read the comments. This guy's crazy. I'm doing this for scientific purposes only, okay? All right, so in we go with our jerky racks. I'm gonna put one right around here. I only have 2 trays with the brisket. And let's place the other one right here. Shut the door. I'm gonna hit the power button. I'm gonna hit the temperature button. I'm gonna dehydrate these at 149 degrees. Time-wise, since this is already cooked, I'm gonna go 4 hours. We'll check in 2 hours, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so the jerky's been in the dehydrator for 2.5 hours. Let's take a look and see what we've got. So that's what the jerky looks like right there. It's kind of dry already. So the meat still feels a little bit flexible, but it's definitely getting there. And again, you don't want this much fat on beef jerky. Again, we're just trying this out for the very first time to see what happens. But if I was gonna do this again, I would definitely trim the fat cap a little bit more, maybe all the way off, so you don't have any fat. That's if you want to make it shelf stable. Again, if you're going to consume this in 2 or 3, 4 days, you're going to be just fine. So I'm going to let this dehydrate for a couple more hours, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, and just like that, it's been 4.5 hours since we put our brisket to dehydrate to make our brisket jerky. Let's take a look at it here. All right, it is definitely dried up a little bit more. Look at that. It looks and smells amazing. I mean, my house smells like I've been smoking a brisket all day. Let's pull a few of these slices out and see what we've got. All right, so I've laid out our brisket jerky. Now these smaller pieces look pretty good. These bigger pieces with a fat cap, all this fat, that does not look as appetizing as these smaller ones, but let's check out the flavor. Now as far as the breakability of the jerky, it breaks, okay? Or brisket jerky, I should say. It's breaking. I think it's gonna be ridiculously tender, but it is nice and dry, I can tell you that, okay? Now these bigger pieces, man, that's got some really nice bark. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if I was gonna do this again and make jerky out of a brisket, I would definitely trim that fat cap down almost all the way down. That way you have that bark on the fat and it's still gonna be enjoyable. I mean, I can actually bite into this. I can tell you that this fat is really buttery, okay? Extremely buttery, check that out. So it's edible, but again, this is not gonna have a good shelf life, but you can still consume this in about 3 to 4 days maximum, okay? And it is breaking, so it's looking good. Let's give it a shot and see what it tastes like. All right, let's give this brisket jerky a try. I'm gonna start with a small piece and see what this tastes like. Here we go. Super tender, tastes just like brisket, but it's extremely dry, like a jerky should be. It's got good pepper and salt flavor. This is really tasty. I'm gonna try a little bit bigger piece and see what we got. That fat is super buttery and delicious. Nothing wrong with this brisket jerky. I honestly can't believe how buttery that fat is after we dehydrated the brisket. It's actually really tasty. All right, so now let's talk about how we can improve this brisket jerky. As I mentioned a couple of times, I think if I was to trim the fat cap almost all the way down to the meat, smoke it, let that render down a little bit. Now I don't want to smoke it all the way through. Probably half smoke the brisket for probably 5 hours, get a nice color, nice bark, good smoky flavor. And then after that point, place it in the dehydrator for about 4, maybe 6 hours and check the beef jerky. I think you'd end up with a really nice piece of brisket jerky. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this brisket jerky, but I gotta tell you, if we make those minor changes that I talked about earlier, I think we'd end up with a really good, tasty piece of brisket jerky, but this is really good too. I hope you guys enjoyed this brisket jerky video, and I will be doing this again and see if we can improve on it. If this is your first time to my channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit BBQ. See ya.